local level, where all athletes should be able to find support in their local language, culture, and context. Therefore, in response to a call from Olympic movement stakeholders, the IOC has led the way in addressing this critical gap. The IOC Executive Board in March of this year announced a $10 million fund per Olympiad to strengthen the prevention of and response to harassment and abuse in sport at the local level. Over the past 7 months, a special safeguarding working group of Olympic movement stakeholders has convened to determine the best model and approach to take. Here in Mumbai, the IOC Executive Board was presented with the recommended approach, which includes, firstly, the establishment of regional hubs to strengthen safeguarding at the local level. Each regional hub will have local, in-depth knowledge and understanding of the status of safeguarding measures, the local legal landscape, and services available in the region they cover, so that they are able to provide trusted, contextual, localized guidance to anyone harmed in sport. The program will commence with 3 pilot hubs as a proof of concept, starting in Southern Africa, the Pacific Islands, and Europe, and in each case, building on existing initiatives. Secondly, to standardize and support this work across the regions, consultation will start on the drafting of an international safe sport framework that draws on existing international standards and sets out the complementary but differentiated roles of states and sports bodies that can be endorsed by the Olympic movement and other key stakeholders. Thirdly, an expert assessment of additional measures may be needed to strengthen national legal and policy frameworks and cooperation between states to reinforce the essential role of states in preventing and responding to harassment and abuse. And finally, to ensure coordination at the international level and in recognition that harassment and abuse is a social issue which sport cannot solve alone. The current safeguarding working group will evolve into an international task force, including representatives from sport, intergovernmental organisations and civil society to oversee the establishment of those pilot hubs and taking an athlete-centred approach which recognises the need for local solutions has been critical to this work. And here we have a short video from an Olympian, a safeguarding working group member, and an athlete with lived experience of this topic. Joana Maranhão.
Hello, my name is Joana Maranhão, a four-time Olympian from Brazil. I'm part of the IOC working group created to establish safeguarding mechanisms at the local level. As someone with lived experience, I see this as an athlete-centered and trauma-informed initiative that has the true potential to build the trust so that athletes feel safe to report and have access to remedy and justice.
And finally, I'd also like to draw your attention to another critical area of safe sport, where we've seen great strides over the past year, and where the IOC's work related to the protection and promotion of athlete well-being is focused: mental health. In June 2023, the IOC Executive Board approved the Mental Health Action Plan. The action plan recognises that athletes' mental health needs are as important for their performance and well-being as their physical health needs. Across the IOC's 4 spheres of influence, there are 5 focus areas, with corresponding key objectives and actions to be achieved by the end of 2026. Tangible outcomes we already see from this action plan include the recent announcement at the International Athletes Forum that all athletes competing at the Olympic and Paralympic Games Paris 2024 will be able to receive mental health and well-being support for a period of 4 years following the Games via the Mentally Fit Helpline, which is available in over 70 languages. Thank you very much. And reflecting our focus on mixed-gender team events being an important part of the Olympic program now, I'll pass over to my teammate, Mary Salwa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kit. Dear Mr. President, distinguished IOC members, ladies and gentlemen, let me update you on gender equality. Yesterday, President, you remind us that for the first time in history, Paris 2024 will have gender equality on the field of play. And you also reminded us why. Because the IOC has allocated quota places equally, 50% female and 50% male. We have come a long way. Let's see how far in this video.
Of competitors at the most gender-balanced games to date. Historic moments. Performances which mark a generation. Images from the Olympics are seen by billions around the world, creating icons and role models for women and girls, proving that if she believes it, she can be it. The Olympic Games reflect women in all their diversity. This is where we prove nothing is impossible. Creating positive, lasting legacies. Showcasing the best of sport and humanity. Hand in hand with the Olympic movement, we'll continue to ensure women can participate in all sports, on and off the field of play. Let's celebrate women athletes reaching ever further at Paris 2024, the most gender-balanced games of them all.
To reach this point, the IOC has not only changed the qualification quotas and the sports program, but also modified the Olympic competition schedule to balance the visibility of men's and women's events in the program, and developed portrayal guidelines for gender equal, fair, and inclusive representation, because we know the important role of media coverage. Now, more work still needs to be done by NOC and IF on team management, technical officials, and even more so coaches. I remind you, only 13% of coaches were women in Tokyo. Hence also the WISH program, supported by Olympic Solidarity, to equip 100 women to coach at elite level. With regard to leadership, the IOC is setting an example. As a result of our reforms, 40% of IOC members are women, compared to 21% before. 33% of IOC executive board members are women. 42% of commission chairs are women. And for the first time, the number of positions in the IOC Commission is equal between men and women, 50-50. This is an important increase compared to the 20% before our reforms. I hope you enjoyed this picture from last night. While significant improvements have been made at the Olympic Games and at the IOC, we also have to realize that this progress is not happening at the same pace across the Olympic movement. Representation in leadership positions within the Olympic movement remains far from gender balanced on average, and often below the minimum of 30% required in the updated basic universal principle of good governance. For instance, on average, 26% of NOC leadership positions are held by women, and among the IF, only 4 are led by a woman, and 8 have a female secretary general. Nonetheless, we see that NOC and IF are accelerating their efforts to advance gender equality. In the last year alone, a number of high-level events fully dedicated to gender equality were organized by Continental Association of NOCs and IFs, like we saw last week in Africa and in Capo Verde with the second ANOCA Gender Equality Forum. These various events have created momentum, positioned gender equality as an executive priority, and recognize it is everyone's responsibility. By continuing to advance gender equality, we will enhance our credibility and relevance for our athletes, for our partners, for our audience, but we also will be true to the 2 commitments the IOC made in 2021 at the Generation Equality Forum. These commitments were recently reaffirmed in our renewed partnerships with UN Women, And as you see in the picture, some of your colleagues were here on the occasion. These two commitments are to consolidate the Olympic Games as an effective global platform to promote gender equality in and through sport, and to accelerate female representation in governance and leadership positions across the Olympic movement. We will continue to carefully monitor our progress and report on our successes, and we count on each and every one of you to advance gender equality in and through sport, and you know you can count on us to support you. There is another field where sport has a responsibility and also represents an important opportunity. This is sustainability. When you decided to put sustainability and sustainable development at the core of your agenda, you decided to accelerate a collective effort to make sport more sustainable. And this includes, first and foremost, addressing climate change. This decision reflects not only the concern of society, but the concern of the Olympic movement itself, and in the first place, of the athletes. And you may remember that in 2021, 50 Olympians from around the world who had competed in Tokyo called on the world leaders to step up their efforts to address climate change. Let's hear from them.
Dear leaders of the world.
Dear leaders of the world.
Dear leaders of the world.
We no longer speak about global warming, but about global boiling, and so has the ambition to address it. As an organization, because we need to walk the talk, we committed to reduce our carbon emission by 50% by 2030, in line with the Paris Agreement on climate change. The IOC has also increased its commitment for the Olympic Games to become more sustainable. And it was said yesterday by Mr. President, Paris 2024 is set to reduce its carbon footprint by half compared to the average of London 2012 and Rio 2016. And it will be the first Olympic Games to be aligned with the Paris Agreement. But from 2030 onwards, Games organizers will be required by the host city contract to minimize direct and indirect Games-related carbon emissions. Beyond the IOC and beyond the Games, the IOC also wants to use its influence to encourage the broader Olympic movement and sport at large to take action against climate change. And this is the objective of the partnership we built with UN Climate in 2018, when we launched the Climate Action Platform for Action, the Climate Action Framework. Today, 300 organizations have signed up, including 46 National Olympic Committees, 33 international federations, as well as Paris 2024 and Milano Cortina 2026 organizing committees. The new IOC Climate Action Awards, supported by our top partners, Airbnb, Deloitte, and P&G, also recognize proactive efforts made by athletes, IFs, and NOCs to tackle climate change. And you see here on the screen the winners and the shortlisted candidates. Sport relies on nature as much as it does on a stable climate, and both are very closely linked. We want to be part of the solution to protect both. And this is why protecting and restoring nature is also a focus of our sustainability work. In 2021, you will remember that the IOC launched the Olympic Forest Project. Let's discover it in images.
Imagine a forest on the front line of climate change. A wall of protection for people and nature. A shield from drought, floods, and land degradation. A source of food, income, and shelter. In 2021, the International Olympic Committee started an initiative to grow native trees across Africa's Sahel, a region hard hit by climate change. We called it the Olympic Forest. Nearly 600,000 trees are being planted in Mali and Senegal. to cover a combined area of 2,000 hectares across 90 villages. The Olympic Forest is a contribution to the Great Green Wall Initiative, which restores degraded landscapes across the Sahel. The trees absorb carbon, a leading cause of climate change. They also help increase resilience of the local communities. The trees provide fruit, nuts, and seeds to eat and to sell on the market.
Beele ko in the region Tambacounda, département de Bakel, e to bange waylo tarini ne wadi cadele kewde jiyaade hen. Foore olympique jiimi hen ko bamtare e weltare. Ledde jibinoje walla wurtinde ladde dum don ina wadi nafoore ina wadi bamtare.
The Olympic Forest is an important element of the IOC's strategy to address climate change and build a better world through sport.
This project is going to be delivered in the lead-up to the Youth Olympic Games, Dakar 2026, and it has inspired in 2022 the launch of the Olympic Forest Network. And to date, 6 national Olympic committees have already joined this network with diverse projects protecting and restoring existing forests, but also wildlife corridors and coastal watersheds, or even implementing regenerative agriculture. These national Olympic committees are Brazil, Slovenia, Portugal, Spain, Papua New Guinea, and India. And as we are in India, let me give you an overview of the Odisha Relay Forest project that has recently joined the network. This project is led in partnership by the Odisha Forest Department, the Abhinav Bintra Foundation, and the Habitat Trust, and supported by the Indian Olympic Association. It will cover, at the scale of India, 1,500 hectares and plant 1 million trees. I've been told yesterday half of them are already planted. It will restore a variety of forest type and protect local plants and animals. What is vital is a community-based forest management, because it aims to improve the lives of the local tribes, many of whom relying heavily on forest resources for their livelihood. This project has been launched thanks to the dedicated efforts of Odisha leadership, who have been showing a profound commitment to environmental conservation, alongside the unwavering drive of Abhinav Bintra, Olympic champion and IOC Athletes Commission member. The Olympic Forest Network is also part of a contribution to a broader initiative, Sport for Nature Framework, which complements the Sport for Climate framework that I presented to you earlier, and which we co-launched in 2022 with the International Union of Conservation of Nature and the United Nations. So far, 40 organizations have joined, among them 16 international federations and 5 national Olympic committees, as well as Paris 2024. So as you see, sustainability is all about teamwork. And I suggest we'll continue to work even stronger together so that sport can be part of the solution. And this, Mr. President, IOC members, concludes my presentation.
Dear President, dear members, we are happy to take, of course, any question of the report on the Olympic agenda before moving to the report of the IOC administration. So my colleagues and I are ready to answer any question you may have on the previous presentations.
Thank you, Mr. De Keber, and all your colleagues. But, dear friends and colleagues, even if you appear to be extremely tired after all your partying last night, may I ask you to applaud what the administration has done here. And now I'm opening the floor to any dynamic questions you may have with regard to all these many projects on Olympic Agenda 2020+5. You're really tired. We have to think about the format of the opening ceremony for next year. At least one has mercy. Mr. Blick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mine is really a comment on sustainable development. I want to express my sincere gratitude and appreciation to the Olympic Refuge Foundation. Uganda, in the last 3 years, has had an opportunity to run a Sport for Social Protection initiative. This project was called Game Connect, and Game Connect has had a lot of success and impact in refugee communities in Uganda. Uganda is one of the largest refugee countries in the world. Some of the successes and the impacts have been through this project, have been safe places for sport, because we've managed to build facilities for sport with this particular project. We've managed to have education for refugees and people who have been displaced. And there's been social rehabilitation and cohesion for people who were affected by displacement. These initiatives have allowed people who have been displaced to have a brighter future. We're currently working on sustainability of this particular project, for these projects to continue with limited funding from the IOC. We're working with partners and corporate sponsors. Some of our partners that we're negotiating with include the European Union and the Italian Embassy. We are working on a project proposal to have these projects replicated in their areas of jurisdiction, possibly outside of Uganda, for Sudan and Congo, and also in areas within Uganda, but out of the project that we've been running. Mr. President, this sustainability, I think, is very, very important for projects that are initiated by the IOC to have a life after funding when IOC funding ceases. This project has been extended for 2 years, but we are working on ensuring that it lives long after funding of the IOC. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blick. Mrs. Batekova.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I would just like to quickly acknowledge how proud I am to be a part of the movement, which is no longer only about the field of play and sport, but also leading the social change and social development. So very briefly about that. My comment will be about the digital engagement, and that to acknowledge that we have found a language to speak with the younger generation. They are digital, they understand this language, and I'm very happy that we are using it to motivate them to move, to live the active and healthier life through their engagement through the social channels and digital engagement. I would like to acknowledge the work and professionalism, creativity and effort of the digital engagement and marketing team, and the Olympic Channel, which plays a great role, and also the sports team that has done an amazing work, and I can't wait to see where this is leading in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Batekova. Mr. Coe.
President, thank you. I'm not too tired to compliment the headquarter teams on their approach and the sustained work in this area. I recognise entirely that this in and of itself is a solid standalone piece of work, but I think there is an inevitable need for an extended piece of work, which certainly the international federations are going to need to grasp, which is a fundamental revisit of the calendar, because there are sports with disciplines that are really just unsustainable during times of the year when we would normally be presenting our championships to the world. 70% of our athletes polled recently in World Athletics indicate a need for climate change attitudes to alter immediately, and 75% of that 70% are saying that it already impacts dramatically on their ability to compete and to train. And while welcoming this work, I think it is inevitable that there has to be an extended view of how we not only deal with this problem, particularly in the face of failing approaches through government, but the standalone approach from sport, which is inevitably going to need some internal and autonomous resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Coe. Mr. Mejia.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much, President. The presentation which we have heard is obviously very important, and I personally wanted to congregate. We work with the communication media, and to see the numbers which are being presented with regard to the Olympic Channel, the whole subject of digital activities is really impressive, and we are able to get much more contact with the world through leadership. In terms of sustainability, this is something that is very important. Every time we have the Winter Games, we see that there are more difficulties for the Winter Games because of climate change. And I think, therefore, it is important that we go down the path that has been indicated by the Commission with regard to climate. I am very pleased to see that in our region, the prize that was given to the Colombian Olympic Committee, I think that this is an encouragement for the work that has been done. But I think that there is also a recommendation to be made. First of all, I think we need to support what has just been said by Sebastian Coe with regard to the many events that take place and which are on the sports calendar. I am in charge of Centro Caribe Sport, which is the regional Central American and Caribbean region. And the sports calendar for all our organizations is really mind-boggling, because you've got the beach games, you've got the youth games, all the different types of games. So I think that this means that we need to reorient and revisit what we do. I'd also like to ask you if we can't, or whether the Olympic Committee couldn't encourage more information be given to the national Olympic committees so that they can undertake these campaigns with the encouragement of the IOC. We can see the participating Olympic committees here, but you need to have the support and the presence in the national Olympic committees as well, so that we can continue to send information and encouragement to the national Olympic committees, which are our base, our grassroots. So thank you very much for the sustainability report and the digital part and the Olympic Channel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mejia. Mr. De Vos.
Yes, Mr. President, dear colleagues, first of all, congratulations for this report. And I must say it's not only the fact that we are maybe a bit tired of yesterday evening, but also the complexity of the report makes it that there is a lot to absorb. Many aspects are touched in this report, and I believe it also clearly illustrates that the world is becoming more and more complicated, more complex, regretfully, I would say, and that also this has a big impact on our sports organizations, and we have to deal more and more with many other aspects than purely manage our sport. And this will probably not improve in the future, and it takes a lot of energy of our organizations to do that. With regard to the qualifiers, the urban qualifiers, I would like to ask a question with regard to the fact that, to my knowledge, and I'm not that long in the organization, this is basically the first time that I know that the IOC is organizing qualifiers for Olympic Games, whereas normally in the past this has not been done. My question is has the IOC the intention to expand these number of events that they will manage and that they will organize, and will they expand it to other sports? And is there not a kind of a risk that there is a conflict of interest, whereas on the one hand the IOC organizes qualifiers for games for which the IOC decides about quota in sports and disciplines? So that's my question, and I thank you very much for the answer.
Thank you very much. I have no other comments. Allow me to answer to the questions who have not been addressed there to the administration. This is the question of Mr. Coe, and the second part of the question with Mr. De Vos, myself, and then I will hand over to the Director General to answer the other questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Coe. You're absolutely right, but you also know that the question of the calendar is on the agenda of the Olympic Summit since 10 years. And if I'm very diplomatic, then I say that so far the response by the international federations was not enthusiastic to enter into such a discussion. Some of them, I will not give names, were not even ready to provide our working group with their calendar so that it could be the basis of such a discussion. So I really welcome your intervention and can only encourage you to make it popular among your fellow IF presidents, so that maybe at the next Olympic Summit we can make some progress in this respect. With regard to the second part of the question of Mr. Mejia, of Mr. De Vos, Mr. Mejia was also about the calendar. Mr. De Vos, quite frankly, with this conflict of interest theory, that's hard for me to understand. You know, to have the qualifying events, and then the events is what you at your international federation are doing every year. You have also your qualifiers for the events then you organize. Where could be a conflict of interest there in this respect? And with regard to then the running of these and potential extensions, then I hand over there to Mr. De Kepper and his colleagues.
Yes, thank you, President. I will answer or comment from some of the comments made, and Mr. McConnell will complement on some of the issues that were raised also on the sports calendar and on the urban games. So, Kita will pass the floor after to you. But I seize the opportunity of Mr. Blick's very nice comments on the Olympic Refuge Foundation to use also this tribune, you know, to thank first many of the IOC members who themselves have not only contributed in substance to the projects and to the activities of the Olympic Refuge Foundation, but also have financially supported these activities. And I think when you see and you hear the support that these activities are giving to these displaced population, these disadvantaged athletes, it's really heartwarming. So I use this opportunity, of course, to exhort everyone to contribute to the Olympic Refuge Foundation, because that's hardly needed to fund and expand these very valuable activities. On Mrs. Bartikova, thanks for your comment on the digital engagement. I think the presentation by both Mr. Exarchos and Mr. La Rosa are showing you the way that has been covered, and we will continue on this way. On climate change, that was raised by both Mr. Coe and also Mr. Mejia. Yes, we are addressing these questions. You will hear further in the session a report by Mr. Karl Stoß, who will be explaining you where we stand on the Olympic Winter Games 2030, and also how we include the reflections on global warming into the reflection about the future of the Winter Games. But same reflection are, of course, valid for the Summer Games. And this is certainly something that not only we, but also the athletes around the world are very sensitive for. And this is, we try to explain is a priority for us, but also for the future of the Olympic Games. And then to my compatriot, Ingmar de Vos, yes, I think you, President, you answered the question, so I think we have covered, but I will ask Mr. McConnell to intervene on the urban games and the sports calendar.
Thank you very much, Christoph. Not too much to add on the sports calendar other than noting I think it has been a subject that is embedded in Olympic Agenda 2020 +5. And we did have a working group established, as the President noted, through the Olympic Summit, including ANOC, ASWAF, GAIF, and other bodies looking at this. I think the work was more of an exchange of information rather than a fundamental change to the calendar, as the President highlighted. But very happy to continue that work again with the stakeholder involvement. Mr. Coe, I think we all understand the current saturation of the sport calendar and the goal of having the best athletes at their best for the key events, including obviously the Olympic qualification and Olympic Games. So happy to pick that up directly with the stakeholders there. More directly in regard to Mr. De Vos, Ingmar, it should be clear that it is not the IOC organising the qualification events for the sports included in the Olympic qualifier series. It is the international federations themselves that set their qualification processes and run those events, including in the OQS. What we have done is bring together existing parts of those qualification systems across the 4 sports, so they're run together over a weekend, which hopefully adds value and a collective value to those events by bringing them together in one city in that festival that we described, and hopefully adding value in terms of the organisation, the support from the host cities, and the promotion of those. And we think, based on the Federation response, we're very hopeful that that does add value to those individual events. But to be very clear, they are run, the competitions, directly by the respective international federations. But we think there's a real value to bringing them together and promoting them in a coordinated way with direct Olympic association.
Thank you very much, Mr. De Kepper, again for this excellent report of you and your colleagues of where we are at halftime of Olympic Agenda 2020 +5. And we are looking forward then to the conclusion of this agenda with hopefully the same success as this halftime or midway report. Since we have the Director General standing there and waiting for more work, I propose that we move on to point 9 of the agenda, and that is the report on the activities of the IOC administration. In this report, you will see how the administration is applying the decisions you, the IOC session or the IOC Executive Board, took in the recent past, how to address the unfortunately ever-increasing politicization of sports and the consequences of the way too many wars and conflicts in our world. And this will give us an idea on how the administration was following up, in particular after our last IOC session, which is just 4 months ago, and how we are trying to hold the line against the ever more divisive and confrontational developments since then. All these events show once more that we must be even more united and even more vigilant to protect our mission, to protect our unifying mission of sport in general, and how to protect our autonomy and political neutrality. Mr. Director General, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President. As you can see from the previous report, the work to date is indeed extensive, and we are on track to deliver on Agenda +5. So yet we have much to accomplish up to the end of 2025, and we will remain vigilant, adapt, and keep learning, as we are, for example, by exploring the topic of artificial intelligence and how it impacts us. In order to stay focused, we have established 3 priorities for 2024, which will guide the work of our administration. They are, and this is not a surprise, first and foremost, deliver the Olympic Games, Paris 2024, as a springboard for the next editions of the Games. The second one is to optimize the delivery of our Olympic Agenda 2020 +5. And then the third one is make the IOC administration an ever more effective, commercially aware, resource-conscious and sustainable organization. We continue to collaborate with the Finance Commission and our entire administration to identify further optimizations, improve our methods of operations, and find synergies in all what we do. We have strong budget and monitoring processes in place. Good governance and operational excellence remain a top priority, and we are on track. This also helps us to secure that 90% of the revenues that we are generating are redistributed to our stakeholders, and 10% go to IOC activities. At the session in last June, the Finance Commission Chair presented the financial details. The IOC demonstrated a strong financial foundation, and despite the challenging economic context, we continue to deliver. As a result of the Agenda 2020 +5 reforms, and thanks to the confidence of our partners, revenues from our top partners have more than doubled for the Olympic 2021-2024 compared to 2013-2016. The IOC has extended its contracts with top partners Atos and Procter & Gamble, and in 2022 we welcomed Deloitte to the Olympic partner programs in the 10-year agreement. Similarly, revenue from media rights holders have also seen growth, with long-term commitments already secured Australia's 9 Network, Infront Sports and Media, and CBC Radio Canada. To date, we have already secured contracts worth $5.4 billion for the Olympiad 2029 to 2032. Additionally, the IOC launched its new hospitality and ticketing model in June 2021. We are currently discussing new partnerships and renewals. And before I finish, let me acknowledge the tireless effort of my colleagues, IOC directors, and with them also the entire IOC staff that is delivering an incredible and dedicated work at your service. I know that all our members are appreciating their commitment and dedication. So I would like now to invite my colleagues, Kit McConnell, and to guide us through the recognition of the International Federation of American Football, and Mr. James MacLeod to provide updates on issues concerning national Olympic committees and other constituents of the Olympic movement. Kit?
Thank you very much, Christoph, and I'll start with the recognition of the International Federation of American Football, as you suggest, Christoph. Dear members, you have in your files the recommendation from the IOC Executive Board regarding the granting of full IOC recognition to the International Federation of American Football, or IFAF. It is the governing body of American football and flag football, and was granted provisional IOC recognition in 2013. Following some delays related to a contested internal election in 2015, the situation has now been fully normalised, and the Federation is now a strong and well-governed federation which meets all of the required criteria, including conformance with the Olympic Charter, compliance with the WADA Code, meeting the minimum criteria of 50 NFs in 3 continents, and there are no objections from the Olympic or recognised federations. The Federation has 75 member national federations, an estimated 5 million registered athletes around the world, and has strong and regular world championships in both American football and flag football, and is on the programme of the World Games. And it now has a strong partnership with the Professional League, the NFL, which includes ambitious joint international development and promotional plans. And we've got a video bringing to life the sport and the Federation. And therefore, President, we'd like to present the International Federation of American Football to the IOC session for full recognition.
Thank you. Are there questions? No. Can we then vote to grant the full recognition? All the ones who are in favor, if you're still able, raise your hands. Thank you. Against? Abstentions? No, then this is unanimously approved. Thank you very much, Mr. McConnell. And we move on with to Mr. James MacLeod.
Thank you, President. Distinguished IOC members, it's a pleasure to be with you here this morning to be able to give you a short report on a number of elements that have happened across the world in the last 12 months, in particular those affecting a number of national Olympic committees. As the President said just earlier, in the past 12 months, we have seen a marked increase in a series of very complicated and demanding circumstances across the world caused by the geopolitical situation. These have tested, obviously, the fundamental principles that govern us in the Olympic Charter, in particular, the elements relating to the autonomy of sport, the equal access of sport for all people, and also non-discrimination. I will touch in this report on a number of NOCs: Afghanistan, the Islamic Republic of Iran, Guatemala, the Olympic Council of Asia, but in particular at the end, this situation relating to Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine. Starting off with the NOC of Afghanistan, and I'd like to place on record the support that we have received from the IOC member, Samira Ashgari, for all of her help in guiding us through a very complex situation that has happened since the Taliban takeover in rise in power in 2021. We have had ongoing conversations and discussions with the Afghan government authorities since that regime change, and we have been insisting on removing existing barriers from the government that hinder women and young girls from accessing sport opportunities in the country. The IOC Executive Board took a very clear position on this in December 2022, and we have reiterated that position with the government authorities on numerous occasions, including last week, where we met the new Director of Sport and Physical Education to reiterate the IOC's position on that. There has been some progress, a tiny bit of progress, and we witnessed that in the Asian Games in Hwangju, where the Afghan delegation consisted of 83 athletes, of which 15 were females in 3 different sports. And they won 5 medals, indeed, including having a joint male and female flag bearer. Now, those different efforts that are made on behalf of female athletes on the international stage are certainly recognized within the country and are greatly appreciated and allow us to continue our conversations with the government authorities. Secondly, with respect to the NOC of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and after the various upheavals and demonstrations that took place last year in the country, we addressed this situation directly with the National Olympic Committee and with government authorities to see where we could help and ensure that the athletes' rights were protected at the best level that we could. The National Olympic Committee has provided us with repeated guarantees, but those guarantees need to be monitored on a weekly basis to make sure that Iranian athletes are able to access sport in a free and unfettered way. So we will continue to monitor that situation. With respect to the National Olympic Committee of Guatemala, in September 2022, the IOC Executive Board took the decision, regrettably, to have to suspend the National Olympic Committee due to ongoing political interferences into the election process. Those interferences meant that the election that was conducted was not able to be recognized by the IOC. And so, as a protective measure for the athletes, for the Olympic community within the country, we suspended the National Olympic Committee. And again, I'd like to thank your colleagues, Laura Chinchilla, Neven Ilic, and of course, Willie Carl Schmidt, for their very dedicated support to try and find a solution in this area. There have been recent presidential elections, and we have been discussing with the president-elect on how we can advance on this. It is worth noting that at the Central American and Caribbean Games in El Salvador, due to this suspension, the athletes were able to participate, but under a neutral flag. And in the Pan Am Games that will be starting next week, the same thing. The 130-odd athletes from Guatemala will be able to participate thanks to the great efforts of Pan Am Sports. But again, this will not be under the flag of Guatemala. Moving on to the Olympic Council of Asia, following the Olympic Council of Asia elective General Assembly that took place in Bangkok on the 8th of July, the IOC Ethics Commission made a recommendation which was approved by the IOC Executive Board not to recognize the conclusion of the election until a review of that election process had taken place. This has now been completed, and the IOC Ethics Commission was able to present a full report to the IOC Executive Board here in Mumbai, and the report identified a number of violations of the Olympic Council of Asia elections and their eligibility rules, including undue interference from the Kuwaiti government, but also from a suspended IOC member. And they concluded that the election shouldn't be considered null and void, and that new elections should take place as quickly as possible. This report has been forwarded to the acting OCA president, Raja Randir Singh, and to the OCA Executive Board for their follow-up, and an Executive Board of the OCA has been confirmed for next week to discuss the report itself. Over the past 12 months as well, we have seen an increase in the issues relating to the discrimination of athletes attending events. There have been numerous instances where athletes have been not able to access competitions due to government regulations and not issuing visas. And we've been working diligently with the international federations and the National Olympic Committees concerned to try and resolve those cases. In addition, we've seen a number of events that have been awarded to countries be cancelled due to the fact that not all athletes could access the competitions themselves. Lastly, just to come to the elements relating to Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine, as you know, following the invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, the Olympic movement has been faced with a very big challenge. Great efforts were gone into supporting the Ukrainian Olympic community through the establishment of the IOC Solidarity Fund, whose management has been led by a small task force in Olympic solidarity and is being led by your colleague, Sergei Bubka. The fund has helped over 3,000 Ukrainian athletes to date, and we will focus now on their preparations for the Paris Olympic Games and the Milan Cortina Olympic Winter Games in 2026. During last year's summit, the IOC was tasked with finding a way for athletes with a Russian or Belarusian passport to return to international competition as individual neutral athletes. The aim of this exploration was to ensure the non-discrimination of any athlete on the basis of their passport and nationality, recognizing that athletes should not be punished for the actions of their governments. Following extensive consultations with various Olympic stakeholders, in March of this year, the IOC Executive Board issued recommended conditions of participation for athletes and athlete support personnel with a Russian or Belarusian passport for the consideration of the international federations and international sports organizations. Since the issuance of these recommendations, many Summer Olympic international federations have managed the implementation of a return of individual neutral athletes to international events, and my colleague Kit McConnell will give you an update on what has happened over the summer. While athletes have expressed varying views, often shaped by personal experience and also geopolitical considerations, overall the athlete community has been strong for the reintroduction of individual neutral athletes into international sports events. And this was witnessed recently at the International Athletes Forum in Lausanne. In some cases, interference in the autonomy of sport persists, with governments advocating for a ban on all Russian and Belarusian athletes from participating in competitions or even denying the issuance of visas. And the IOC strongly rejects these government interferences and continues to closely monitor the situation and supporting IFs in the implementation of the IOC's recommendation. As you will recall as well, the IOC has not issued invitations to the NOCs of Russia or Belarus for the Olympic Games Paris 2024, and is yet to take a decision on athlete participation in those games. You will have also seen that at the IOC Executive Board a couple of days ago, a decision was taken to suspend the Russian Olympic Committee due to its unilateral decision on October 5th to include as its members regional sports organizations which are under the authority of Ukraine. This constituted a clear breach of the Olympic Charter because it violates the territorial integrity of the NOC of Ukraine and as recognized by the IOC and in accordance with the Olympic Charter. Despite this, it has been clearly reiterated by the IOC Executive Board on the suspension, a decision on the suspension of the Russian Olympic Committee, that the IOC's position and recommendations of March 2023 remain fully in place, and the IOC reserves the right to decide on the future participation of individual neutral athletes with a Russian passport in the Olympic Games Paris 2024 and the Olympic Winter Games Milan Cortina 2026 at the appropriate time. And with that, I'd just like to place on record our thanks for the help that that we received from a lot of the IOC members, the NOCs and the international federations in addressing a number of these problems across the world. And with that, I'll pass to my colleague, Kit.
Thank you very much, James. And as you noted, since the recommendation of the 28th of March, there has been a return to the field of play of the individual neutral athletes in dozens of events directly governed by 7 Summer Olympic International Federations, including 5 World Championships. And this is on top of the ongoing participation in many professional sports leagues and events. Nearly all of the other Summer Olympic IFs, who are not team sports, have confirmed their commitment to this return in their respective sports. And it's not only a commitment in principle, but now moving practically through that process to the return, some aiming towards a return to the field of play later this year, and the others in the first months of the start of the new year. And there, I'd like to thank very much each of those international federations for the close liaison on this. In doing this, we should also note that every single one of the international federations have expressed their strong solidarity with and ongoing support for their respective Ukrainian sport communities. And as James noted, this is done in partnership with the IOC Solidarity Fund, supporting those Ukrainian athletes on their pathway towards the Olympic Games Paris 2024 and the Olympic Winter Games Milano Cortina 2026. Across those events with the individual neutral athletes since May, there have been very few issues, and we've seen the number of events growing across the sports. Originally, the Ukraine did not compete in those events, as many of you know, but is now competing on the field of play at those events. And we can confirm that across all of those events, we have not had a single other national federation withdraw from competition. And equally, we're not aware of any single athlete who has withdrawn from competition due to the return of the neutral athletes. The feedback from the athletes competing in these events has actually been quite consistent in supporting the return. And as James noted, while some athletes have expressed some varying personal views, we've seen an overall very strong global support for the reintroduction of the individual neutral athletes into those international sports. And this has been affirmed most recently at the International Athletes Forum in Lausanne at the beginning of this month. We believe the eligibility criteria set by the IOC Executive Board provide a consistent framework and a clear framework for the federations to develop their own eligibility review of the athletes and the support personnel. And the IFs have developed now a somewhat standard process developed by the first federations to go through that process as a reference for other international federations in their individual eligibility reviews. And we as the IOC have also stressed to the IFs the importance of a strict but fair implementation of that eligibility criteria. And finally, we have, in liaison with ASWAF, remained in contact with all of the international federations to ensure a good understanding of the process and those criteria. And there we'd like to thank, again, each of the IFs for their excellent partnership in this regard, because it does take quite a bit of administration of that process, with a large number of IFs who are now completing that return to the field of play in the coming months, to add to those already in that position.
Thank you, Kit. Thank you, James. President, this concludes this part of the report, but I wanted to also underline that what Mr. McCann to you is a pure implementation at your last session. So this is what we've done through to the last couple of months in implementing the decisions that you took, and I think it's important to underline this. President, the floor is back to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. De Kepper, for this other implementation report after the agenda, now of the administration. Are there questions on these topics? Mr. Infantino.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I would simply like to say a couple of words on the last point which was mentioned in order to commend the work of the IOC, your work, Mr. President, of the Executive Board, of course, of the administration with Christophe and his entire team, but actually every sports person around. You said it several times, Mr. President, this is a time of division, of extreme aggression and division around the world, and we need occasions to unite, to bring people together, and there's no more powerful tool than sport to unite the people. Now we have to protect the autonomy of sport, the political neutrality of sport, and to protect the values of sport. And in this respect, I think it is important, especially in this divided world, that we see every sports event, of course the Olympic Games, but also every World Championship, World Cup, as an occasion to bring people together and to unite and to give our contribution to that. I know that there are decisions which are not easy to take, difficult decisions, but in taking these decisions, we always have to make abstraction of any political stance, sometimes even personal positions and opinions, and put the values of sport on the top. So we have to avoid populism, we have to avoid demagogy, and we have to embrace our values, which have made the history of all of our sports in the last 100 and more years. Respect, tolerance, inclusion, no discrimination, and unity, even if this is sometimes not so easy. But we have to continue to do that, especially for the young athletes, young sports women and men, and for their future. As you were saying, if we are not united, well, how can we say to the world to try to be a little bit more united? So it starts from the sport, and we should really continue on that path. And this is my plea and my appeal to all of you, thanking you for your leadership in this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Infantino. I can only respond by saying I couldn't agree more. Thank you very much. Mr. Ali.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I just a little curious to know that the matter of the OCA has been festering for a long time. I understand that now they finally submitted the report to the Executive Board. But I would like to know, with all the confusion, what is going to be the modus operandi of holding the elections? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ali. I have no further questions and comments. Then I hand over to Mr. MacLeod to answer to Mr. Ali, please.
Thank you. Thank you, President, and thank you, Mr. Ali.
Wait a second. There I have last second intervention or request for intervention by Mrs. Asghari, and since she was a part of your report and delivered her own important report on the situation in Afghanistan, I think we should still allow her to speak. So you're most welcome, Samira, for your statement. But then I ask any other questions. Now you want to be asked, apparently, Mr. Capralos. So then we have Mrs. Asghari, Mr. Capralos, and with this the speakers list is closed. Mrs. Asghari.
Thank you. Dear Mr. President, distinguished executive board members, and my dearest fellow colleagues and friends. First of all, I'm so thrilled to see each of you in person, and I hope all of you are healthy. And I would love to take this opportunity to thank everyone in this room because of their support to Afghanistan. I would say the IOC and other relevant sport organizations continue support. The example of the IOC and executive board members and my fellow IOC members' support is the Asian Games, that we had a great participation of female and male athletes, even though that the situation is unstable in Afghanistan, but we achieved 5 medals. It shows the solidarity, the support for the athletes, and I wanted to take this opportunity in this hall to thank you in person, physically. Thank you so much. Thank you, James and the team.
Thank you, Mrs. Asghari. Mr. Capralos.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I would like to express my compliments to Christophe de Kepper and the whole IOC administration for the great work, especially in these difficult times. We had a difficult issue to address, and we still have it, the conflict and the war between Russia and Ukraine. And I think that up to now things have progressed quite well. On one hand, it was important also to convince the Ukrainians and their athletes that by not competing in competitions where independent, neutral athletes with Russian passports would compete, that would punish their own athletes, and that would create a problem to their own Ukrainian athletes. On the other hand, I would like to thank all the NOCs that have participated in the effort to help the Ukrainian sport and Ukrainian athletes, because many of them are training and they get funding from many of the European National Olympic Committees. And this is a great meaning of the true meaning of the word of solidarity. And finally, this last decision is very important. I think it's very right, and I think that resolves many of the issues that we're facing. Of course, at a certain point, the IOC has to take a decision about the possible participation of the athletes, independent athletes, in the Olympic Games and declare it openly in Paris, and I think that we should do it at a certain point. And finally, one last thing. I believe that since we all talk about unity and following the same rules, I think and I urge the international federations also to follow the recommendations of the IOC, and all of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Capralos. Mr. McLeod, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the various comments. Coming directly to the comments of Mr. Ali relating to the Olympic Council of Asia report. The IOC Executive Board a couple of days ago has sent the IOC Ethics Commission report to the full OCA Executive Committee with a series of recommendations. The request was that an OCA Executive Board would be held, and Mr. Randir Singh has already agreed to that, and that is happening next week. And the OCA Executive Board will need to take note of the elements within the IOC Ethics Commission report and take its own decisions on how to move forward. The recommendations are generally twofold. First of all is to review the constitution of the OCA and the election rules and the ethics rules because they're not fit for purpose. And secondly is to hold new elections at the appropriate time. So that we hope that the OCA Executive Board will be able to take the appropriate decisions according to the report. Otherwise, thank you to Ms. Ashgari. Very kind of you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McLeod. Thank you very much, again, Mr. De Kepper and all your colleagues also for this report. And now you will be surprised. After all these online sessions, you are not used to this anymore, but we could have a coffee break for 20 minutes. But if you would really look 20 minutes to manage it so that we can then catch up with regard to the timing. So enjoy the break.
this is a huge opportunity for us to strengthen the safeguarding process that the IOC is starting to establish.
There's obviously a lot of emotion, and there's a lot of topics, maybe not controversial, but very sensitive and timely. And I think it's really healthy to have conversations with each other on, our opinions and what we think should happen going forward.
We, at Paris 224, we wanted the sport to be at the heart of the city. So we used our iconic and emblematic sites, and we transformed them into iconic venues.
These Olympic Games, Paris 2024, promise to be the games of a new era.
Together with the IOC Athletes Department and all IOC departments, we're here for you and for the athlete community. And like George mentioned yesterday, it's an important thing for everybody to have a secure base. So we hope that we can be a secure base for all of you. So, thanks to the support of the IOC, we were able to invite representatives from the entire global network of athlete representatives to attend this forum. I would first like to highlight that for nearly 80% of the participants, this was their first International Athletes Forum, and this was important for our Commission to know in order to inform athlete representatives about key information and also support and empower them in their roles. The participants at the forum included over 180 NOC ACs, over 40 international sports federations and also recognized federations, members of all 5 continental association athletes commissions, members from Paris 2024, Milano Cortina 2026, and LA 2028 athletes commissions, the IPC Athletes Council, the World Olympians Association Executive Committee, the WADA Athletes Council, and the Athletes' Rights and Responsibilities Steering Committee. It was great to bring the entire Athlete Commission's network together again in person after 4 years, as the last in-person forum was held in 2019. We had a mix of plenary and breakout sessions to ensure athlete reps received important updates on key topics and then also had the opportunity to discuss in smaller groups. You will see a list of our plenary sessions here. I can say that a highlight for athletes is always Q&A with the president, and athletes really took this opportunity to ask their questions directly to the president. Again, this year we ran over time as there were a lot of questions and really a good, engaging discussion. So thank you, President, for your support and availability on that. We also presented our updated strategy and the athlete-focused Olympic Agenda 2020 plus 5 recommendations. We had some dynamic panel discussions on athlete support from the IOC and the Olympic Games with many contributions from the participants. Athlete representatives were also very open and had good discussions during the dedicated session on the reintroduction of individual neutral athletes. There were diverse views expressed, hearing from many athletes from around the world, and there is global support from the athlete community on the unifying mission of the Olympic Games. We also had breakout sessions both days. Day 1 was dedicated to effective athletes commissions, and on day 2 we ran a safeguarding workshop to upskill athlete representatives in this area. The marketplace was extremely busy during the 2 days. It gave participants the opportunity to learn more on various IOC topics and also interact with some of our top partners and other Olympic movement booths. Participants also use this time to network and meet each other, which is very important for us to ensure that the ACs can share details and experiences, learning from each other. All participants were sent a digital version of their AC workbook before the forum to act as pre-reading for the event and to give them knowledge on many different topics that would be covered during the event. The workbook was produced in English, French, Spanish, Russian, and Arabic, and printed versions were distributed during the registration, so participants could take notes and record their actions during the forum. We received a lot of positive feedback about the workbook from participants who greatly valued having so much information in one place to digest before they came to Lausanne and to be able to also share with their peers locally. As athletes, we always want to learn and improve. For the majority of participants, this was their first athletes forum, so their feedback was very valuable for us to see how we can support them even better. So we will send a survey to participants to understand their experiences during the forum and to see how we can put on an even better event next time. Here are some of the results from those that have replied so far. The respondents rated the forum 4.7 out of 5, which is very encouraging. The respondents surveyed feel more empowered in their role as athlete representatives after, and you can see some of the other numbers on the slide. I am also happy to say that athletes, athlete representatives, IOCAC members, and panelists all engage actively online. Social media posts were focused mainly on forum content, the road to Paris, and key learnings and takeaways of the participants present. The social media sentiment was very positive overall, and at the same time, some of the topics generated debate on social media as well. The key points that emerged from the various discussions and sessions were in 3 areas: the Olympic Games-related initiatives, support for the network of athletes' commissions, and our support for athletes directly. Around the Olympic Games initiatives, we discussed the updated social media guidelines, which will provide increased opportunities for athletes during the Games to raise their profile by sharing their Olympic journey with their fans, and these guidelines will be released in the next few weeks. Another topic that came up was the opportunity for professional experience for athlete representatives. NOCs were encouraged to have their chair or a member of their AC as part of their delegation to support them during the Games, to learn about the work of their NOC during the Games and also benefit from this operational experience as an asset for their career transition. In terms of support for the network of athletes' commissions, a key point that came up was administrative support to athletes' commissions. Building on the dedicated support to ACs that the continental associations are already providing, NOCs and IFs are encouraged to provide their ACs with administrative support to support the running of the commission and assist in the delivery of athlete-centered activities. And on support for athletes directly, mental health remains a key topic, for example. A dedicated mental health helpline will be available for all Paris 2024 Olympians and Paralympians. Athletes competing in Paris 24 Olympic and Paralympic Games will then have access to the fully confidential and 24/7 mental health helpline available in 70 languages for the entire Olympiad. Additionally, it was announced that athletes will be able to benefit from 1-year premium subscriptions to a leading mindfulness app to improve their sleep, enhance focus, alleviate anxious thoughts, or for any other reasons. This offer was launched on Athlete 365 on 10th of October to coincide with the World Mental Health Day. The third pillar of our strategy is how we support athletes. There are a number of ways in which we do this, such as through the programs and resources on Athlete 365. We work hard to ensure that athletes have tools they need to develop in their sporting and non-sporting careers. And also, thanks to the investment from Olympic Solidarity, athletes can benefit from various programs to support them on their journey to the Olympic Games and beyond. Our IOC-AC strategy is not obviously just for us, the IOC Athletes Commission members, it is for all athletes from across our movement. Here are examples of the support for athletes. Olympic Solidarity, through NOCs, is supporting athletes by providing scholarships for athletes and their entourage, as well as technical support and funding of NOCs in many different areas. As a member of the Olympic Solidarity Commission, it is very meaningful to be able to contribute and to be involved directly with Olympic Solidarity activities on behalf of our Commission. Also, through our activities, as the IOC Athletes Commission, we provide information and resources for athletes directly and give them a platform to discover what our top partners and Olympic movement stakeholders are offering athletes. The interest from TOPS to provide a service directly to athletes has increased significantly in the past years, showing their interest in gaining greater connection to athletes and in developing purpose-led initiatives. These athlete programs leverage on a TOPS area of expertise and or the corporate commitments they may have in a specific area. And this area is only growing as we look towards Paris 2024. In the important area of safeguarding athletes, together with the Medical and Scientific Commission, we have a strong collaboration to support athletes in this area. As one tool in this field, the IOC will be offering a new cyber abuse protection service for athletes during Paris 2024. This service is an AI-powered system that detects abuse and requests that the platform's action removal of the abusive post before the athletes notices. The service will also cover officials and coaches during the Paris 2024 Games. It will work by identifying and addressing discriminatory, abusive, and threatening messages sent to athletes via social media. It will be able to detect offenses quickly so that platforms can take action before the athlete has the opportunity to see it. We think this is an important step to support and protect athletes from harm during the Games. This concludes my report on how we have been advancing athletes' voice through representation, empowerment, and support. So thank you all.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Teo, are there questions? Here there